which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor. We appreciate that. All right, that's going to move us to presentations. The first presentation we have is a proclamation calling a regular election on April 8th, 2025. Give me 1 second. And 1 more second. I'm going to get there. Oh. That's why I keep needing 1 more second. I knew. Okay, so under and by virtue of the power vested in me, as mayor of the city of Newberry, Florida, a general election is hereby called to be held in the city of Newberry, Florida on Tuesday, April 8th, 2025, for the following purpose. We will elect a mayor to serve a 2-year term. We will elect Group 4 City Commissioner to serve a 2-year term. And we will elect Group 5 City Commissioner to serve a 2-year term. The election will be held in the Northfleet Municipal Building, Precinct 6, located at 25420 West Newberry Road, Newberry, Florida. The poll shall be open at 7 a.m. on said day and close at 7 p.m. on said day. The clerks, deputy, and inspectors of said election are as follows. Fleta Harris is going to be the clerk. Valerie Fuldoir is going to be the assistant clerk. Thomas Oliphant will be the ballot scanner. Thaddeus Dobrak will be an inspector. Sharon Oliphant will be an inspector. Loretta Shane will be an inspector. Ronald Osborne will be a deputy. And David Yorkowicz will be the alternate. The candidate qualifying period begins at noon on Monday, February 24th, 2025, and ends at noon on Thursday, February 27th, 2025. Candidates for the municipal election shall qualify for office with the city clerk by appointment by calling 352-472-2446 or emailing cityclerk@newberryfl.gov. The qualifying for mayor is $155.38. The qualifying cost for city commissioner groups is $144.67. Final day of registration. Book closing for municipal election. Registration books of the city of Newberry, Florida will be closed at 5 p.m. on Monday, March 10th, 2025. Given under my hand, official seal of the city of Newberry, Florida, this 13th day of January 2025. Madam Clerk, do we do the appointments before the pre-week so that people come in and do their whatever they can do ahead of time? Do we still, that's what they're calling for the appointment for? Come in, ask questions about qualifying, those kind of things. So anyone thinking about running for office this year, I'd call early, get the information. There are some things that you can do ahead of time, some things you got to wait for that qualifying week, but don't wait for that qualifying week. Please don't wait for the last day. The bank is the longest one, going down and getting everything open with the bank and all those forms. So sometimes people, they want to do a shock and awe thing, and they're going to wait and surprise everybody at the end, and then they get stuck at the bank for 3 hours, and then qualifying closes and they missed it, right? So if you are thinking about running, call 352-472-2446. Ask all of those questions. Our clerk will give you the best advice. Be it proclaimed. Okay, any questions from the dais? All right. Item 2, creation of municipally owned nonprofit entity for grants. I am super excited about this one. Come on down, Miss Jane. Tell us what the idea here is, the concept here, because this is going to be fun. This is going to be exciting. Yeah, we're ready to go. It's on. All you got to do is click that button. It might be upside down. It might be backwards.
I thought I did.
It's a little practical joke we like to play on everybody that comes up to do presentations.
Oh. She said turn it red to the green, so I'm pushing it down to the red.
I'm colorblind, so you know it could be anything for me.
So tonight, first of all, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, Council, and City Manager. I'm glad to bring this to your attention to request your action to receive this presentation and provide any feedback that you deem necessary. Can a municipality create a nonprofit? Attorney General, Florida Attorney General Opinion 20640 says yes. IRS Revenue Ruling 60-384, 1960-2, CB 172 says yes. Without going through all of the, all of the pages. So what we're looking at is the strategic plan that the city has, and in order to do a municipal nonprofit, you're looking at being able to revitalize Newberry downtown, trying to capture funding, grant funding, corporate funding, et cetera, in order to any historic priorities that the city has, in order to be able to move forward with the things that the city has envisioned for the future for our any of the historical areas around the city. So, in looking at Goal E, to research and maximize grant opportunities, there are foundation grants, corporate grants, federal and state earmarked funds for nonprofits. By creating a wholly owned city nonprofit, you can tap into those, whereas municipal governments, a lot of times they'll say, oh no, you have to have a 501c3 in order to apply for this. Well, that's what we're creating in order for the city to apply for it. So, the state of Florida, the Florida Arts Culture, another avenue, is they did an impact study. So the state generated $5.8 billion, Alachua County $190 million by capturing grants for art and culture and historic preservation. Local tax revenue, $6 million. That local tax revenue is part of Alachua County's study, and generated throughout the entire state 91,270 jobs. Household income increased by $2 billion, and the annual payroll increased by $14 billion. So, IRS exempt topic 184, a wholly owned 501c3. What IRS requires is you first must be a separate entity. They define a separate entity as a corporation incorporated in the state where the municipality is. So the first item would to be to apply for articles of incorporation with the state of Florida in order to create a not-for-profit corporation in Florida. The catch is it has to be organized exclusively for charitable and educational purposes under 501c3. So what that means is all of a sudden that entity that the city of Newberry has created, now all of that rules for 501c3 applies to that, and not normal governing regulations, such as the nonprofit can't tax. It's not a sovereign entity, because as soon as you create it, it all follows the 501c3, except for the city is entirely in control of the funds. Any expenditures would have to meet commission approval. An annual report, Dallas would prepare at the end of the year for commission to review it for any funding that came through from grants, et cetera, through this separate entity created by the city. The mayor and the commissioners would appoint someone from the city career staff as the board of directors, not necessarily anyone from the public, because it's a wholly owned entity by the city. Normally what's done is commission will probably select the city manager as the CEO, or the board, the president of the board, et cetera.
I'd suggest a three-person board, city manager, an assistant city manager, and the mayor. And it's a three-person board, and it's done. Part of what we're all talking about here was the goal when we created Main Street, because Main Street was a 501c3. They could go after grants. The issue there is if you create a board and it's got a different, an entity, and it has a different board, well, then after a couple of years, it generally tends to kind of go off and take on a life of its own, right? No harm, no foul. But what we're talking about tonight has the opportunity for us to go after the money to do the things that you guys want to do, but we don't have the funding to it. So if we want to help restore these downtown buildings in a big way, if we want to help restore the light plant, right? Now we can go, there are grants that we can go after as a city that we can go after, and there's grants we can go after as a nonprofit that we can go after. So it kind of opens up the door on both sides for us. I'm not trying to jump in the middle of the presentation there, but I've already got 2 requests. I talked to Dallas. I'll ask this question to you too, but you know, any nonprofit can go after a number of things, but I think it's better to create a nonprofit with a focus. So we have a Newberry Historic Association. I would suggest we start a nonprofit for historic buildings, light plants. We got a lot of historic buildings that people really want us to go after and try to save money. So I would suggest one of those. We also have residents who really want to start up some sort of annual or biannual health fair. And I think that there's an opportunity for, we're talking small grants there, $50,000 would cover everything. And that would actually bring health services to town, local, so people wouldn't have to travel, diabetes checks, those kinds of things, right? So I would suggest those 2 right off the bat, because those would be, and I'm not trying to get it, I don't want to have 15, you know, because there is accounting and reporting. But I think those, and we could just start off with the historic buildings, because that's kind of the big ticket item. We can see how it goes. We can start off with those 2, right? See how that goes. But I think this is, for the things that you guys have said you want to be able to accomplish, this would be a wonderful tool to go after some funds.
Absolutely.
You could appoint whoever you want. I think the important message there is, like for the NHA, the Newberry Historical Association could serve as an advisory capacity, like, hey, we think you should prioritize this, but ultimately we want to keep control of the funds and the ultimate decision right here, because at the end of the day, you guys are the ones that have to answer the questions about how do we help the dock repair our oldest building in town, right? Do we just sit there and let it crumble because it's not ours, or can we help go after a grant, right? What do we do with the light plant if no one's going to respond to a RFP to put it out there? Are we just going to sit there and let it deteriorate, or are we going to go after a grant to keep it standing and looking nice? So I would say it's the same board.
Well, what it is under IRS regulations, it belongs to the city. It's wholly owned city. I know this is a different concept. I've done it with previous cities, but it's wholly owned by the city. Therefore, you're looking for career staff, you know, such as a city manager, et cetera, to populate as the board. So to explain, the board governance is done actually through state of Florida regulations. So the board governance, I agree with the mayor, if you stack it with more than 3 people, then you've got, it's harder to be able to pass whatever grants that you want to go after, whatever, anything that you want to do. And I agree with the mayor, you can always have, and I don't know if you got the packet for the example of the bylaws. In there, I always put a paragraph that you can if you want to, or you don't have to. Your executive committee, also called an advisory committee, you can bring them in, you can delegate certain authority for them to, whatever it is, authority that you want to delegate them to do in order to, you know, even go look for grants, or an advisory that says, you know, the best the best thing that we can do for the city is A, B, C, D, et cetera. So your governing board, by limiting it, what a lot of people don't understand with nonprofits is your board of directors are the people that are legally responsible for the board. If somebody, not in the city, if somebody were to do something fraudulently, those board of directors are legally responsible for the fraud. So if that person was
So I say a
convicted.
commissioner, a city manager, assistant manager, and one of the commissioners. I'm
Yes.
just kidding. I'm just kidding. I mean, the beauty about this is that it doesn't really matter the three people, because this would be the board, right? You guys would say, hey, go turn that nonprofit Newberry Historic Association off and go get us a
Exactly.
grant for the light plant, right?
Exactly.
Go get us
exactly.
a grant for whatever, right, that you wanted to try to save. We had an old house here that everybody wanted to save, but nobody really had any money to put towards saving it, right? You could say, hey, yeah, I think we're going to have a question with the cold storage, right? The cost to build that out is more expensive, right? But I think if we have this, we could say, hey, let's go after a grant to save the cold storage building. Now, we could bring that cost per square footage down if we could get a $500,000 grant like we got for the light plant. Now, all of a sudden, it makes sense, right? Right now, our hands are tied based on what we can do as a city versus what nonprofits can do. So, is this our last slide here, Ms. Jane, or you got more?
Oh, I'll go through it real fast.
Okay.
So the next thing is for me to do the application for the 501c3, and these were my credentials. I actually do this, or had done this as a side job. Newberry is too busy. I can't do it as a side job anymore.
Well, we love that. We love it. We want to keep you
But I
busy.
filed over 1,000 501c3s. I've managed 3 city wholly owned nonprofits previously, a housing authority, community development corporation, a police athletic league, that wholly owned by the city. So these are the things that, these are the things that that can be done as far as the mayor was explaining. And yes, you can just make it as one activity, like say historic. And the beauty part of making it one activity is when you come in to add activities, it's done as a financial statement on your end of the year returns. So it's easy and quick and efficient to do one activity, whatever you decide, because at the end of the day, it's the commissioners and the mayor's decision.
Well, and Ms. Jane has been very successful helping us so far. So I think this is kind of opening a door here that I never knew existed. I would ask the commission to direct staff to begin creation. And Ms. Jane, did I understand all right? We could start with a Newberry Historic Association and then add, because I think the other one that we're looking at could really be more like community event oriented. It could help with festivals, it could help with health fairs, it could help with all those kinds of things.
Honestly, when you do a nonprofit, and what I like to do is be generic.
Okay,
So if we're doing anything historic, anything.
Right.
Historic evokes culture.
the historic
evokes
environment, that one's
everything.
done. What I'm asking is do we need another one that could do like a health fair?
No.
It could come in under the
That's the
historic.
beauty of a 501c3. You can do all of that.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so directed, I need a motion. Question. I got a motion from Commissioner Clark, second from Commissioner Maison. Comments, question on the motion, floor from the dais.
Let's have a little quick, I'm
Uh-huh.
all for it. The question would be, how long does it take to get this established?
Okay, it takes, because the state of Florida is a little bit lagging, it'll take 2 weeks for them to process the articles of incorporation. It'll take me 1 week to prepare the 501c3 application, which is Form 1023. It will take IRS, because I'm only doing one activity, IRS between 3 to 6 months. Everyone that I've done in past years, it's been 3 months. Everything is done online through IRS, and there is a fee even though we're a municipality, because we've created an entity, even though it's wholly owned by the municipality, the state of Florida is $75 and some cents. IRS would be a $600 fee, and it's done online. You pay online, and it's not a long process, not really. We're looking at 3 or 4 months.
And Miss Jane, how successful do you think will be? I mean, right off the top of my mind, I'm thinking light plants and cold storage. Those are the two that we've got some interest, but the cost to repair them are high. You think you can find us some grants for those, for this nonprofit?
Yes.
I believe
And
in you.
if you have an advisory committee, I always tell people, you never know who knows who. So and I'm always open, and if you say to me, well, I heard so-and-so got this, I will immediately jump on it and research it. So whatever it takes in order to find funding for all of the city's projects, that's what we'll do. I'm open to anybody's suggestions.
Well, I have a motion probably second. Any more comments, questions on the floor from the dais? Comments, questions for the public? Creation of a nonprofit to help restore some historic buildings. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously. Ms. Jane, go make it so. We're going to get those buildings under.
All right.
We're going to fix them. Thank you, ma'am. Number 3, very exciting, Building Strong Communities Award. Anytime we have an award, I don't see Dallas in the room, so Mike, are you going to introduce this item?
Mr. Mayor, I am.
All right. And I think you're going to do a great job at it,
And
too.
I'm gonna wing it.
Yeah. We'll put that on Dallas's evaluation.
Yeah, Dallas is helping a sister city that's in dire
It's in
need of
dire
help.
need.
Dire need of help, and so I am happy to pinch hit for him. Mr. Mayor, the Florida Municipal Electric Association is an organization that we belong to. They provide us with legislative support. They provide us with trade information. They represent us in Tallahassee to protect municipally owned electric entities like ourselves from legislation that's coming down the pipe. So they're a great asset to us, and I know from time to time all of you guys have worked. Oh, we have a presentation. Have worked with Amy Zubley, who's shown right there at some presentation. I think she probably comes in, it should be once a year, but probably comes in once every other year and just kind of gives us the overview of FMEA and what they do for us. Well, each year they present these Building Strong Communities Awards to cities that, and well, we got no more detail than that, but that provide programs and services that serve our community. We usually see it going through all of storm season, but it's for programs and services above and beyond that. As you know, we do all sorts of things to benefit our community, including last week during the cold snap that we have. You guys may not remember adopting the policy that said, hey, if we're going to have temperatures below 32 degrees in the night, we're not disconnecting anybody. We'll just put that on the hold list, hope they get paid up, but we won't disconnect them. We do the same thing in the summertime when it is sweltering heat. Policies like that that are geared to make the life of our electric utility customers better, that is what this award recognizes. And for the umpteenth year in a row, the city of Newberry has transmitted our list of these are the services, above and beyond services that we provide, something that the normal electric utility doesn't provide, we think, and we met the criteria to receive this award. So, Mr. Mayor, here's the plaque, and I'll be presenting as, and I'd like to get a photograph with the mayor and our assistant city manager who made the mistake of being in the room tonight.
We don't put that on
There you go.
Make sure the photograph is from the waist up. Now, some of us aren't wearing shoes that were meant for photography. Get right there in the middle there.
There you go.
I did 1, 2, 3, smile. Now tell the joke and smile. Got it.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Mr. Mayor, that concludes my presentation.
Well, great job pitch hitting, and I would just say to the dais and to the public, the only danger with winning all these awards is that it just starts to feel like secondhand, right? And I feel it all the time. The manager said it like the umpteenth year, but every single year these awards mean something. It means that we haven't forgot our roots. We haven't forgotten the people that we serve. We're still out there. We're still working just as hard. Just because we won it for 5 years, 6 years in a row, doesn't mean we're going to go after it any less hard next year, because that's just the Newberry way. So thank you for doing that. We appreciate it. And please pass on our congratulations to everybody who worked to make that happen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, your commission likes to hear from their public frequently enough, so we set aside public announcements. These are the 2-minute announcements, something that's not on the agenda here early. If it's on the agenda, we'll obviously get to it. If you want a little bit more time, we have 5-minute public comment at the end of the night. Does anybody have anything you want to talk to the commission about right now? Hearing none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. A motion to approve the consent agenda as it was published. A motion from Commissioner Coleman, second from Commissioner Farnsworth. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously. That's going to take us to the Alachua County Sheriff's Office amended agreement. And Mike, you're on the agenda for this one, so you don't even have to pitch hit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, we contract for law enforcement services with the Alachua County Sheriff's Office, and that agreement is written specifically with the sheriff. We've been doing this for 8 years, I believe. That we started this when the commission made the decision to discontinue receiving law enforcement services through the county's municipal taxing service, primarily because that tax rate was set after you agreed to join. You agreed to join in January per law and how those things were done. Tax rate set in August or September. There was just a feeling that we're not in control of what those costs are. So the commission had the fantastic idea to direct staff to go see if we could accomplish the same, maybe even get better level of service, because we could uniquely specify the level of service that we want. We negotiated an agreement for seemed like the better part of a year, got into an agreement, and with, at that time, Sheriff Darnell. We've continued it through Sheriff Watson, now through Sheriff Gainey. We have a new sheriff in town, as they say. Sheriff Scott was elected in November to serve as Alachua County Sheriff. He was sworn in last week on Tuesday. He's now the sheriff, and we approached him and said, "Hey, Sheriff Scott, would you entertain continuing this contract? Our contract provides us 30 days with which to extend that agreement." He beat us to the punch. When we called over, he said, "We're already working on it. We want to extend the contract, and I've got someone working on that right now. And so please continue with it on your agenda for the next meeting. And icing on the cake, I'm going to come out and introduce myself to the commission and answer any questions that they have." So, Mr. Mayor, that we anticipated that we were going to be seeking authorization to execute a soon-to-be-produced document that would extend the contract with Sheriff Scott. But, in keeping with that, we're on top of things. They transmitted the amended contract to us this morning. So we got a chance to review it. It is, as they said it would be, it is the same agreement with a new sheriff. And so the agreement is before you tonight. We are seeking authorization. Let me see what we...
Resolution 2025-01.
And the gentleman that writes these is tasked with putting together the presentation. So in my own evaluation, I'm going to have to remember this. So I didn't put together...
But it is in your backup material, 2025-01, right? Yeah.
The slide deck, but what we're seeking is authorization for the mayor to execute an agreement with Sheriff Chad Scott extending the law enforcement services contract in Newberry. And before I turn the podium over to Sheriff Scott, I just mentioned to the commission that we are, it may be in there. We are also right 8 months away from this contract terminating. And so it's probably time for us to start thinking about a contract extension. So if the commission wants to tag on a Part B that says, "Hey, staff, why don't you engage with Sheriff Scott and begin negotiating a contract extension? If you have any thoughts about what you'd like to see in that, please throw them out. If not, we'll create a discussion item for the next meeting or two where we can solicit comments from the commission about some modifications that they might like to see in the agreement, maybe traffic control at congested
15.
school zones, things of that nature. These are probably the only one thing I hear a lot of comment
Yeah.
about. So, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my presentation. You have a recommended action, and I would invite Sheriff Scott to speak if he
Sheriff
is
Scott,
so
come on
inclined.
down and introduce yourself to us.
Like I found it.
Not everybody knows you.
Wrong place, so-
Yeah, we knew it was in there somewhere.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening and congratulations, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, City Attorney, and Manager. I'm Sheriff Chad Scott. As you could see, if you look at the contract, the only thing that changed was the signature. I grew up here in Newberry. It's truly an honor to be the sheriff of Alachua County. Some people say it's a dream of mine that came true. So, so I can honestly, and I can, tell you guys that this Newberry is near and dear to my heart. I grew up here. I walk the streets here in Newberry. I walk by this building every day, walking to elementary school. I walk by this building going to high school. I live right down the street from Commissioner Farnsworth. So I consider this as
You lived in the rich part of town. Oh, I see. Yeah.
so I know we have a contract, but I have a heart. I consider this my home. This is my love. So, I'm going to put forth great effort to make this city greater than it is now, when it comes to law enforcement. Law enforcement is truly a calling for me. I didn't choose it, it chose me. I remember Charlie Jacobs and Charlie Schuler, the ones that patrolled this area, and, they had an impression on me, So I vowed to become a deputy sheriff when I was in college, and not knowing that one day I would be the sheriff, So I plan to take this to another level, at all costs, So I've done some great things. This is my 34th year in law enforcement, So I love what I do,
We love to hear that. And I learned something about the sheriff the other day that I never knew. But Sheriff Scott was the one who was the first criminal justice director at Newberry High School. He helped get that program started. He was the SRO at Newberry High School years ago. I never knew that. All this time we've talked, I never knew you were the SRO and got the criminal justice. So it was good seeing you the other day at the expo for criminal justice. It's nice to have a sheriff show up and be part of the community like that. We appreciate it. We look forward to working with you. Any questions for the sheriff?
I just say congratulations and, long dear friends, so.
Yeah.
We look forward to working with each other.
Absolutely.
Then I would ask for a motion to approve Resolution 2025-01 with an amendment to authorize staff to go ahead and enter into those negotiations. He's got a lot to do, right? So 8 months is a good time to slowly kind of piecemeal it out.
Yeah.
For the new one, I had a motion from Commissioner Clark, a second from Commissioner Maison with that amendment to begin negotiations. I would love to see, and I don't think it should be for free. I think we should go ahead and pay for it, but having somebody down there that will direct traffic at 27th, 15th in the morning and the afternoon, I think would be fantastic. So if we can do that under the operating existing, great. If that's the cost of that, but now is the time. Let's go ahead and get that in there. And then there has been some communication about getting somebody at the light to help kids across. I think we had a kid either hit or almost hit there. So that, I think I'd be willing to take advice from law enforcement about whether that's needed yet or not. But I know the 15th, I know you guys are great doing us a favor in the morning, helping people get across. But there's also a backup there in the afternoon. So if we could talk about those kinds of things. Anything else you guys think about, if you're like me, it'll come to you at 2 o'clock in the morning and you'll text the manager and say, but let's talk about this too, right? Mr. Manager, is that everything we need in the motion?
Yes, sir. That is everything you need.
Okay. I have a motion. Any comments, questions on the dais? Public comments or questions? A motion on the floor to extend the contract and immediately begin working on continuing the relationship for 4 more years. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Thank you, sir. Congratulations, and go make it great.
All right. Thank you.
Chad,
Thank you.
congratulations, and I just want to say that Charlie Schuler had a positive influence on a lot of people in this community, so I'm glad you.
And Charlie Jacobs.
Charlie Jacobs, I didn't know, but Charlie Schuler, I did know.
Absolutely.
Depending on the lineage, you were under Charlie Schuler in the 1800s.
Thank you.
Thank you. Drive safe in the rain.
Congratulations.
All right, that's gonna move us to item 11, item 10. We moved to new item 9. Scrivener's error on the agenda, I went
No, that was item 9. The numbers don't change.
the numbers don't, so item 11 is RFB
Yes.
2025-01. I'm sorry, did we ever read that resolution into the record? I'm so sorry. Real quickly, Mr. Attorney, would you please read resolution 20? You need it? Oh, it's right here. Yep. We were so excited, Sheriff, we did to get in there and welcome you, we forgot to read, so just give us 1 second here. We gotta go backwards. You made the motion, you made the second. We'll do it all over again.
Is it attached to the agreement, or is the
Okay, there should have been the elections thing, and then the next thing should have been 2 copies of the sheriff's. It clipped, not paper clipped.
Mr.
They are actual
Mr. Mayor.
clipped, not paper clipped.
I don't believe there is a resolution. There was the agreements, but
The resolution
I was
isn't.
not party to preparation of any
I'm
resolution.
sorry, that is my error.
Okay, so, Mr. Attorney, if we can't read the resolution,
That is my error. There is not a resolution.
It's just a vote.
just a
and-
vote to go do it.
Yes.
Yes.
That's fine.
That is
Perfect.
my error.
That means I didn't make a mistake. I like that even better. All right, there we go. Lift station number 8, and let's go ahead. This isn't a resolution either. So we'd have nothing to read. RFB, what is RFB?
This is the
Request for
next
bid?
item.
Do we need to read that?
There is no
2501?
resolution on this
No
one.
resolution? Okay, so let's go right into that as well. Mr. Jamie, are you gonna introduce? No?
I was gonna say lift station.
Yeah. Look at Mike he's just
Mr.
pitching in for everybody tonight.
Mr. Mayor, this is a project that, as you might guess, is coming out of our utility area, but Stephanie Poolhollow?
It's our new purchase
Stephanie
order.
Hollow is a purchasing specialist, actually, and she is an amazing purchasing specialist. So she has been with us for a few months now, and the caliber of work that she is putting forth is excellent, really helping us out.
That's good because we really like to buy things. So,
So she managed this RFB, and she's going to make the presentation. Jamie's here to help out with any complex details you guys may want to know, the inner windings of a flight 3-phase submersible pump. That's Jamie's question, but any questions you have about the bid, Stephanie's going to be able to help you out with. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Commissioners, Mayor, thank you, City Manager, for the introduction. I am the new purchasing specialist, but I am here to ask for a recommendation on action.
before we can listen to your presentation, we have to know, did you graduate from Newberry High School? Okay. Are you a Panther?
I did not. I am actually a military brat, so, you know,
There we go. Okay, no problem.
traveling around,
Yeah.
conserving.
But you're a Panther at heart now.
Of course.
All right. Okay. Proceed. Yes.
So I'm here today, let me go ahead and fast forward to this, because I want to ask for your recommendation to go ahead and authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with Watson Construction. I'd also like to ask you to go ahead and authorize a 10% not to exceed for any change orders that may occur. Just to give you a little bit of background on this, why we need this. We have 2 lift stations that are about 490 feet away. This is on Northwest 250th, and it's between just 8th Avenue and 7th Avenue. These are very close together. If we go ahead and convert the lift station number 8 into a manhole, go ahead and do a gravity sewer to number 7, then we can go ahead and consolidate those. And if you have any questions on the details of that, like I said, Mr. Jones is here to go ahead and speak to it.
No, it sounds pretty like you had it right there, right on there, Miss Stephanie. Good job.
This is already in the budget. It's on the CIP list, which is our capital improvement projects list. We received 2 bids. However, we are fortunate enough to receive a lowest responsive bidder from Watson Construction, and it was under budget by about $10,000. With that, we would like to go ahead and recommend that we proceed with executing this agreement and giving the city manager the authorization to do so. So if you have any questions, please let me know. If you have any technical questions, please refer them to Mr. Jones.
Commissioner, have any questions?
Motion.
I have a motion from Commissioner Maison. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Clark. Any questions?
All right.
Okay.
Aye.
No publics from the any questions from the public? Hearing no questions, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously. You did a great job on your first presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
What branch was your mother or father in?
Air Force.
Air Force. All right.
Yes.
All right. Well done. We'll tell them we appreciate it.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. That's going to take us to item 12, which is 2025 state legislative agenda. And Mike, I think you're supposed to lead this one, so you don't have to pitch hit.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And
Wastewater. Is that pretty well done?
actually, not this year.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're going to change it up a little bit. Staff's recommendation is going to change it up. What our legislative agenda is going to be will be what you guys advise us. Would like to brag for a minute on both Jane and Stephanie. New to the team, both bring a ton of talent to our team and experience, and so I think you're going to see really big things coming from the both of them. And actually just from your staff in general, because they're buttoning down what they do so well. So legislative agenda, recommended motion is to direct staff with regards to items that you'd like to see on our legislative agenda list for this year. And then secondly, as a secondary consideration, sometimes you guys have directed staff to support other agencies that have projects that will impact Newberry. An example might be supporting FDOT in their seeking funding for the Twin Pairs project, or supporting, a couple years ago, you asked us to support the school board in a quest to get funding for a school out on the western side of town that we thought might be beneficial. So as you're going through a list that staff has proposed, if you see items that aren't necessarily to Newberry as an organization or entity as a direct benefit, keep those in mind, and if they're important to you, we'll add them to our list. So, Mr. Mayor, that's what 18 font looks like. And the city manager has a rule about 20 font, but this would have been 100 pages long. This same list is in your staff report. We presented, I think, 25 items. I'd say the top 6 are ones that we're currently working on, and then after that, it's kind of the same list of ideas for you guys to consider to make sure that we cover all the bases. But the first item that we proposed is new this year. We've talked about Champions Park quite a bit, and the need for upgrades at that facility, but we've always come short on a funding source. Currently, the only funding source we have for Champions Park is the $25,000 a year we receive from our operations partner at minimum. And in all the years that we've operated the park out there, we've only received $25,000 minimum payment. And the park is now 12, 13 years old and is in need of some upgrades. So staff's recommended appropriation fund is requesting $500,000 from the state legislature to fund fencing replacement at Champions Park. We have $50,000 match funding, so it's not an even Steven match, but it's a 10-to-1 match. But that's what we pitched at the legislative delegation meeting. If that's not the commission's will, not to worry, no one remembers exactly what we pitched at that meeting. What they will remember are the appropriations forms that we are currently filling out and transmitting that way. As you know, we get advice from Tallahassee about the tenor of the legislature, and we have, last year, I think we made 3 or 4 appropriations requests, and the legislature funded them all. The governor vetoed most of them. Unfortunately, we did get one across the finish line. That was the electric plant. We got a grant for $350,000 at the electric plant. We managed to hang on that, but wastewater funding and the Veterans Park funding both didn't make it across the veto cut line. This year, the legislature has indicated and the governor has indicated that appropriations are not in favor this year. and we were told to seek one, no more than two, and the dollar amounts were going to go from seven-figure appropriations down to six-figure appropriations. So we have several legislative advisors that all sing from the same hymn book telling us that, and so we're trying to make our request approvable by the legislature.
Mike,
So-
if you said this, I apologize, but this kind of is deviating from our strategy in the past. Our advice in the past was one, two things. Keep the focus. You get 10 minutes. So you're asking the commission if they want to do four of these, or you're asking them to
We're
pick
saying we're saying
Keep it.
get it tighter this year.
tighter this year, one or two.
One, no more than two, and no seven-figure asks. We were told to try to cap them in the $500,000 range. And so our staff's recommendation is for Champions Park. On the item number 2 there, that's not a seeking funding. We've got a grant application with the state of Florida, and, just support for that. That's kind of an easy one to commit to. That application's already in, and we promote that every opportunity we get with the legislature, with the governor's office. If you recall, it's been 4 weeks ago now, we traveled to Tallahassee to advocate both with the governor's office and DEP for that grant. We have a $5.6 million funding request in, and it's a grant. It's a grant program that's in place, but they are making the decisions right now on the same thing. We'd like to ask our legislative delegation to support our grant application.
So is number 3 doesn't fall into the 2 appropriation
It's not an
requests?
appropriation, it
So,
is just,
it's a grant that's already funded. We just want your support.
correct.
Because in my mind, 2 and 3 are still those are our primary, we need the jobs growth grant, we need the wastewater.
We concur with you.
Ag tech is our
And-
premier economic development,
And-
focus.
Yes, sir. And when we were getting denied last year by the governor, his explanation was there are grant programs that these should be seeking funds from, not from the legislature. So we went that route. We took his advice.
All right, Commissioner Coleman, before we leave this page.
Okay, we can go ahead and scratch number 1. We need to give that boondoggle back to the county and get away from it. I think everybody on this dais inherited that boondoggle. And that's the reason we ended up with Mike New. So I want it gone. It does not support anything here. I know I'm beating an almost dead horse, but they don't come into Newberry. They go right on back there to Archer Road and stay in those hotels and motels. And I don't want to waste staff's time or anything I think, what do we got, 2 years left?
No, sir. This is our
This is
last
our
year.
last year, yeah.
There we go. Man, that just
I would-
made it even better.
And I'm not advocating that it make it on our list to talk to the legislature about, but I would say before this dice unilaterally make that decision, because we've got a developer out there who's making some pretty good plans based on there being a baseball park there. Now, those plans have stagnated for 10, 15 years, but I don't want to rip the rug out from under someone saying, well, we're going to help support this, and then say, well, we didn't even invite you to the meeting, but now we're sending a bulldozer out there to bulldoze it over. So I understand the sentiment that you're expressing, but I think it should be a little bit of a larger conversation with folks that have got some buy-in out there before we just say we're done. And I think every single partner we have would be appreciative of getting some funding source to help address the concerns that make it that word that you used. There it is, yeah. Commissioner Clark?
So Commissioner Coleman, I was in the same way. I was going to express it a little different.
Go for it, man.
Well, the 500,000 for me in funding, if my question to Mike is, can we build the tower and the emergency responder for 500,000 that's on item 7? Would that cover that build to make that an absolute training facility? Or would that just get us started? That's a great, to me, that would be something I would advocate for if we could, and take it off the fence we ought to do something with the fence repairs later in life, but I don't believe, I'm with Commissioner Coleman on that, but I think there's more money spent there, better money spent on first responders and training and offering some education to young kids here in the magnet program. So,
Commissioner Clark, to your question, $500,000 funds critical infrastructure that we would need at that site. The build-out that Chief Vogel has planned.
yes, sir.
It probably exceeds that, but we have always envisioned that this would be done in components. And the last phase that didn't make it because the county withdrew their request,
Exactly.
we were going to develop for under $400,000 total investment. So I'm confident that we would be able to put phase one of our training facility into play if we received $500,000.
That would be
in
my,
funding.
I see all the other numbers that don't get appropriation, so that's my,
Do we
Two
still
cents.
have land on the environmental part for that, or did it get absorbed into some other project?
We currently have a little more than 5 acres available at that site. The county initially asked for 10 and then reduced their ask from 10 to 5 acres. So the 5 acres adjacent to the county rural collection center is currently unallocated.
And I think the tower that the county was originally proposing, they had a grant with 350.
Correct.
So we get to the tower, we get that part of it. Is number 6, Mike, is that getting us electricity that comes from another part of town? So if someone runs into the
It's the-
one inward,
It comes from the same part of town, but it's taken a different route, so we should have the redundancy that we see. That's
Okay.
exactly that project, to build a second feeder coming in from the west side of town, so that whenever we have a point of failure along State Road 26, half the town never sees it, and the other half of the town is able to switch over to it pretty quickly. We don't have to wait for the pole to be replaced, which could be, as you know, a 2 to 6 hour long project. That project is under design right now, so we've been working with FMPA to design that project, and it's in our CIP, and it's something that we anticipate proceeding on in the next 2 years.
that's something we've been talking about for a decade. The previous city manager was gonna build a substation. Mike came in and said, that's not the way to go. And I believe this is the way to go, but I'm ready to get there. You know, this has been something, so, again, if we're back to where we're asking for 2 or 3 things, I'm not discounting the fire station. I think that's great too, but we've had.
well, you said under 500,000, we're in the millions on that.
Yeah.
So-
We have the dump trucks that forget to put their dump truck down. We got the metallic balloons, we got all these problems, right?
Let me ask one question, since Mike and Jamie's sitting here, on that particular item, is that redundancy line, since we won't have a substation on this side, will that be in the same transmission feed, like we hit a pole, they all go down, or will there be a back feed in another quadrant of town that can't be touched with the same trees or same cars?
The route that has been selected is to go south off of Newberry Road, a little over half a mile, get onto the next section line, and then buzz straight
it's a
to
totally different-
337. We'll connect to the west side of the loop that feeds
gotcha.
our city at 2 points, but there'll be a switch in the middle, so we'll
Close.
feed half of the loop from one feeder, half of the loop from the other, and if we have a failure
Got it.
upstream, we'll interconnect those and feed the whole city from one or the other.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Yeah, man, always coming to you.
Thank you.
So 2 and 3 are grants. Number 9 is just a letter saying we support the rivers. So what we're really talking about in terms of going after, what I've heard support up here is 6 and 7, right? All right. Is there one more slide, right?
There's
We have
Several.
2 more. All right. Number 10 is a letter, right? I mean, I think it.
And yes, it's actually getting IFAS to seek funding for the for a ag tech incubator facility. Now, we met with IFAS just last week, actually with Commissioner Martin in attendance, and they said, look, the time
Is now.
25 and 26 are the years to get funding for agricultural projects. but they recommended 26 for the incubator. They've already developed their 25 agenda. It's not on there. They committed to working with us to get it on their 26 agenda. We put it on our 26 agenda and let Tallahassee know it's coming, and I think that greatly increases the likelihood that we could get funding for that.
I mean, I would say, does Commissioner agree, if it's a letter of support for our partners, our allies, is done, right? We're talking about what do we focus on our ask for funding this year, right? So those kinds of things, easy, let's do them.
Yes, sir. And so you can see item 10 would be support, either letter or oral, when we're meeting with legislators. 11, same way. We want FDOT to be funded to build the twin pairs through the city. Provide funding for.
12 is part of 11, right? It's the sidewalks and amenities that go with the two-way pairs, or is that a different, that up and down 45?
Those are for the latter streets that are associated,
But we're just
associated with.
supporting
state roads.
FDOT's request for those things?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Farmers market, maybe a good idea, maybe the wrong time. And then moving on, there's 25 total, so you'll know how many more are coming. The first one is a memorial for victims of racial hate crimes. Had discussions about that. There is Commissioner Martin's favorite project. They're at number 15, Community Splash Pad. And in his absence, I think there might, be a motion made, because we know that he would be the cheerleader. Were you here tonight?
Yeah.
Another commission favorite project, Rails to Trails. Support the Alachua County School Board and construction of a new school. That was actually one that had some serious conversation from this commission about 4 or 5 years ago. Funding grant for updating our LDRs. We're underway with that, but it's an expensive project. And those technical assistance grants come in $25,000 allotments. It's about a $125,000 project, so $25,000 helps us
But
with that.
that's a grant, not an allocation, or appropriation.
Yeah, that's a grant
So
as
that
well.
that falls outside of our,
That is
pick
correct.
two things to go for appropriations. If it's a grant, then rock on, right?
Agreed. If the city wants to jump back into the comm business, the communications business, because we're missing it after all these years. And we do have a presentation coming for Central Florida Electric Cooperative in the near future to talk about a partnership with them. And then the last 6 here, introduce legislation preempting charter counties from amendments to the charter that take away municipal home rule. And that came from conversations with the Growth Management Act that passed, is somehow get the legislature to be involved so that we don't have to deal with that again in the future. My belief on that is that the vote, while it passed, was misunderstood by most of the voters that voted on it. So if there was a law on the books in place of that, then we wouldn't have to worry about the voters being confused by the language on the ballot.
Mike, is there any support outside, League of Cities in favor of that? League of Counties staunchly standing against it? Is Newberry the only municipality leading the charge for that, or do we have allies?
I don't know about at a statewide association level, Mr. Mayor. I've not broached it, but I have had discussions with other municipalities, and actually, I think that idea didn't come from Newberry. I think that idea came from one of our sister cities that suggested it to me and asked if the city of Newberry would consider joining the fray if they ever moved that way. So it made it to the list last year. First year I remember it being on there.
But this is 20 is a lobbying. It's not a request for money. This is a request for Representative Johnson.
And
will you go?
And I floated this with Representative Johnson, and he said that he didn't think he could swing it as a freshman, but he suggested that we work on it this year, that in 2025, and that it be an initiative that we really push hard on in 2026, to be candid. 21 is similar, that, right now, the Alachua County preempts us on things like irrigation and legislation at the state level. It may be combined with item number 20 that just said charter counties can't preempt cities if the cities otherwise regulate those things, or if they're otherwise regulated at the state. An example would be, well, one, we regulate irrigation, and the county regulates it as well. And then two, the state regulates wastewater plants and stormwater, and we pay them money and we get permits from them all the time. And the county regulates wastewater plants and stormwater, and we have to, so we're actually serving two gods in that respect. And there is a way. The feds also have jurisdiction on those issues, but the feds cede their authority to the state. And so I don't have a federal permit for wastewater or stormwater. The state takes care of the state and the feds together. Staff would be pretty enthusiastic if the county would partner with the state so that we only had to deal with the county. Or the county could just get out of the business, take their funding revenue for the environmental protection and put it into roads. Just a thought.
I think if we could combine 20, 21, 23, I think there's something in there that we should work on. When you add in I don't remember who gave the presentation, but the county's irrigation ordinance adds $6,000 by itself to the cost of a new home. The stormwater ordinance that we have to adhere to is killing us on this side of the county where we percolate, right? We've got these huge stormwater basins that you've never seen, but they're costing the businesses a tremendous amount of money. We lost a commercial business right here downtown because the cost of figuring out the stormwater killed the deal, right? So, I mean, we have our own costs that we have to put on the commercial business and residents and those kind of things to build our own roads. But we can work to protect our residents and local business owners from some of the outside costs from the county that are redundant, that are already regulated by the state. So I think that should be a goal of ours, but not necessarily, let's just work on all three of them.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Coleman?
And then the last one, the last one I'd point out is just that we used to be a ready community. Ready, it's kind of like the presentation that Jane gave this. It's another designation that you can have that opens up pots of money that you otherwise wouldn't be available to. Getting that ready designation could be beneficial for some of the funding that's out there. What normally keeps us from being ready identified, and ready is Rural Economic Development Initiative, is our income data suggests that we should be that, and if you look at Newberry, we'd say we're appropriately rural to be ready, but we're in a county that is not rural enough. And so the last time we were ready designated, the legislature especially allowed both us and Hawthorne to just be ready designated, but that had a 4-year sunset, and it has since sunset, and so we would ask the legislature to again designating Newberry as rural. And Mr. Mayor, that concludes the alternatives, and as we suggested, for the ones that we're seeking appropriations, not more than 2, and trying to keep the ask to 500,000 to 600,000 max.
Commissioner Coleman?
Back to that, I guess the only county in the state of Florida has its own DEP or EPA. Are they able to tell us what to do over here in Newberry still?
Yeah,
Because I sit here and think,
Westone
we
on the other
irrigating
side.
watermelons and everything else.
Ag usually gets exempted somehow, some way. On the west side of 337, the county's environmental department got so involved in that project that the developer just said, this is not worth the headache of dealing with them, right?
Correct.
So it's those kinds of things, even though we've done all the testing, we've done all the reports, we've done everything that the state says we have to do. Some people on that side just don't believe that us hillbillies out here in Newberry can read a report and can follow the rules. So they get involved in it, it adds big dollars. So
God bless you. You
those
gotta
are
deal with it.
those are the kinds of things that if we could just say, look, home rule, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna do the environmental study, and if it comes back bad, we'll fix it, right? Or we'll deny it, because that's what we gotta do. But yes, those are things that are driving our costs. Like I say, our costs are our costs. We gotta pave our roads. We gotta build our wastewater. We gotta do the things we gotta do. But when you add on our costs on the top of the stuff that the county's forcing, well, that's when things start to get out of control, right? All right, so 2 appropriations, trying to keep it at 6 figures. 1 appropriation is more than 6 figures by itself. But I'm almost willing to break the rule and say, let's see what we get a partial funding and go after the fire.
Or, Mr. Mayor, that, we've recommended 1.7 on this list, most obviously before we knew about the $600,000 rule. I got a feeling that the city of Newberry would not turn down a $600,000 appropriation. So what it could be is number 6, but mark down to 600,000, or whatever our legislative consultants tell us is the number they think that we could swing with the state legislature.
It also seems like number 7, there's got to be a grant out there for first responders training that we could probably replace that. Because the county got a grant to do it, so
Right.
there's a grant somewhere, and the grants we're not trying to hold to the rule. So I would love to make some progress on some redundancy so that the next guy who forgets to put his dump truck trailer down, it's an hour, not 6 hours.
And we should probably, I can't remember your name,
Ms. Jane.
Miss Jane, we should look for a pickleball grant.
Bonnie has been needing something to play.
He needs something to do,
Yeah.
so pickleball is where it's at.
Ever since the Panther Open. But, so is that, are we in agreement? We'll go after a grant for number 7. We'll reduce our ask for number 6. Number 6 is gonna be the ask,
Yes, sir.
or can we go after 2?
We're gonna go after 2.
So we wanna go after 6 and 7?
That's what I'm hearing.
I'm just
That was
going
a
at-
suggestion on my
Right.
part. I mean, if it makes other senses, but I'm just against the fence for 500. We can put a
Right.
training facility in for
The
500.
jobs growth grant and the wastewater, those are grants.
Absolutely.
Because those are still our top priority.
Correct.
These are the things on top. Do we need that in a motion, Mike, or is a head nod? Put
That
these in a
is fine.
brochure.
We'll take either.
Okay, everybody agree? 6 and 7 are what we're gonna go after. We're gonna change the amount for 6 down to 600,000.
I'm
Go
good.
put it in some nice, snazzy economic development paperwork, and let's go to Tallahassee and bring home that money.
Absolutely.
All right? All right?
Y'all, Jordan's mom gave me that photo. That was his 2nd grade class photo.
Look how good looking. All right,
That completes us, Mr. Mayor.
wonderful. That brings us to comments. I'd remind everybody, we have switched it up. We'd like to hear from our citizens first. We've been waiting here all night. So we do citizen comments first. I'd ask staff, if you want to make a citizen comment, make sure you know you're in the citizen comment section of the meeting as well. If you want to talk to the commission about something, you have 5 minutes to do so. Just make a queue, line on up. Seeing none, that's going to move us to city manager comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just real quick, is to remind the commission that on next Monday, the 20th, we'll be celebrating Martin Luther King Day with an event at the municipal building. It's really well done, nice event. Starts in the morning with a walk from the MLK Center over to the municipal building. And we have a great program, and we provide lunch. And we'll make sure, if the invitation hasn't already been transmitted, that we send everybody calendar invitations with that. Also, the city observes Martin Luther King Day as a city holiday, so our business offices will be closed next Monday, and that pushes solid waste services from Waste Pro back a day for the entire week. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my comments.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Attorney?
Thank you all for coming to the ethics training. I think it was a
Love
good
the
show.
ribs.
It was good ribs. It was a good suggestion. So it was a lot of fun. We enjoyed it. And Kirsten and Danielle did a wonderful job in presenting. Congratulations, Sheriff. Look forward to working with you. And it's going to be good tenure, I can tell already. So that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the ribs. Madam Clerk? Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Cole?
Congratulations, Sheriff Scott. Don't sneak in there in half moon where I'm at now. I want to talk about common sense stuff right here. And number one, I'm going to say Greta is unbelievable at her job. I mean, think you can use that term as, when it comes to code enforcement, and she's top of the list. And I know there's been some, people upset, over her going out and doing her job. I really want, if we could, maybe start looking at some of this stuff as more of a common sense approach. I'm not saying that we need to.
Commissioner Court, can you tell us what we're talking about here?
Yeah, we're talking about our
I
code
got
enforcement.
common sense. I got that part.
You
Code
got it.
enforcement, common sense.
Yeah,
Is there a specific code that
what
we're
it-
talking about?
Yeah. I don't want to discuss who it was or how it was. I put on social media that maybe this was in the 90s when our codes were worse.
We're talking about boats in the front yard? Is that what we're talking
No,
about?
well, you can say that if you want.
Okay. I'm just trying to find out what we're talking about. All right. Common
So-
sense boats.
But look, maybe I had mentioned that maybe we should go through it and, revise everything. I thought about it over the weekend, and I don't think that's the approach we need to take. But in most incidences, we have, it's all or none. We're gonna, but some of this stuff is pure common sense, where if a boat's in your front yard and it's not blocking your sidewalk or the road the main road out in front of your home, I don't understand how that's no different than the citizens having a car in their front yard, to me. I can understand, and just like Commissioner Clark did today, he did like I did. I went and rode the neighborhoods, and I guess the big thing is that there's some bad stuff that's out there. We as a municipality, we gotta have this. We got to have codes. Or everybody's. I'm not saying everybody. You understand where I'm at. We need to govern where they don't have tires out in their yard and all that. We don't want that to be what they say about Newberry. But something that's like this, what happened, and I think most people that's watching on YouTube or whatever knows what happened. So maybe just start looking case by case. Does that make sense?
Well, and I'll say we asked Scott's opinion here also, but I have a couple of thoughts here. One, we can't govern by common sense because everybody's common sense is different. So we gotta write something down so that they know what it is, because one person's common sense. So we have to give some direction. We can't just say be commonsensical, right? We gotta give some direction. I'm like you. I don't necessarily see the reason why we can't have a boat, but I have to say no one sent me an email. No one has reached out to me. Has anybody reached out to anyone here except on social media? Has anybody? No one's. We haven't had any
I
resident
reached
come.
out to this person.
Yeah, no one's come to present. So while I agree with, I see him. While I agree with that, okay, maybe some of the things in our books we need to revise. I would say to this body, you can't just say you got to use common sense. Y'all got to give better direction than that. It's got to be clearer, right? I would also say that this is one of the reasons why this body has gone to the development of HOAs, because we don't want to deal with this.
Exactly.
Right? We had HOAs, each neighborhood, y'all get to decide how you want the neighborhood to look,
And
what
this
you want it to
particular,
look like.
right, excuse me, but this particular neighborhood was supposed to be.
Well, and it like Gary Wiesman, the developer,
Yes.
he was the president until the last law was built, then it
Yeah,
expired.
and
He
it never
nothing
happened.
ever happened, right? So, we can direct staff to go back through the LDRs and to take those kinds of things away. But I'm telling you now, you're going to have to give better. It's got to be. It can't impede the sidewalk. It can't block visibility. It's got to be. I also think that we've given staff direction multiple times that we don't drive around looking for things. So when I hear about somebody that says, well, none of my neighbors complained, this is just Newberry, tyrannical government Newberry out there looking for problems, I think, no, you gotta, she may not wanna fess up, but somebody in the neighborhood has complained. Because when I ride around neighborhoods, if we drove around looking for things,
Oh, Lord.
Greta would be stopping every other house, right? So somewhere in there, somebody's got mad at somebody's called it in, because we don't drive around just looking for things. So I'm all in favor. I've talked to the city manager. I can't think of a reason why somebody can't park a boat that's not impeding a sidewalk, not impeding a view. I also know, I don't believe Newberry's ever had a particularly overbearing liberal diocese that's just passed a whole lot of laws. So whenever that law was passed, except for money, there was probably a reason, right? And I would say to either to Scott or to Mike, because what I would love is to say, look, if this is an issue, I'd love for y'all's neighborhood to form a HOA so y'all can handle these kinds of issues. Is there a way after neighborhood is done that the neighborhood can go form an HOA and decide for themselves whether they want to have boats in the front yard, RVs in the front yard, or is it too late?
The declaration of restriction and covenants that I'm familiar with are done on the front end, when a developer is doing the work to create that. And I don't know how, I think you would have to have unanimous consent, and I'd have to research it, but I think
From the neighborhood.
from the neighborhood in order to create a post facto HOA. I don't believe it's on a majority type system. So I think that would be a very difficult proposition to do retroactively. I will say this, that in the code enforcement realm, it's always controversial, it's always political. One of the reasons we don't have a code enforcement board is it's very hard to have your neighbors appointed to a code enforcement board and then rule on a neighbor that has got some problem. So it's the effort to have a magistrate is to have a fair and objective, impartial judge that is hearing matters just like a judge would. And of course, our magistrate doesn't even live in town. So it's that sort of effort, and the magistrate could rule against us just as much as he could rule for us, and it has to be a hook in the law, in our code of ordinances, that says, wait a minute, this is a problem, it's against the code. The other problem is, this goes back about 30 years ago, the state attorney's office said, we're not prosecuting municipal code violations or ordinance violations any longer. So the legislature put into effect a code enforcement provision in the statute that gives us either a magistrate or a code enforcement board, and of course, we've elected to go to the magistrate's side. The other thing that I think your manager has stressed to the code enforcement officer, to legal, is we want compliance. That's what we're looking for. And any way we can get to compliance in the least obtrusive way possible is the effort that we are trying to undertake. And sometimes, truth be told, Mike gets pressure to get things done, and sometimes the legal process takes a little while. But we are trying to do things in a way that is as even-handed, I guess, maybe the best way to say it. And having been here, I was thinking about it earlier, since 1980, I kind of have a pretty good idea what my adoptive home wants to do and how they want to approach it. And I think that's his directive to Greta and to us, is to try to achieve that kind of goal.
Works with residents to compliance. Commissioner Coleman?
Yes.
Yeah, I just, I keep going back to common sense, and I understand where you're coming from on that, but I really, if I wouldn't have rode over there and looked, because when I looked at it, I was like, what in the world, But if I wouldn't have went through some other neighborhoods that had worse things, maybe that would have not.
Which is why I know for sure that we don't just drive around.
Right.
We don't just drive around.
I agree.
Because the direction has been, until we get the BP station, until we get the old pharmacy, and I'm glad to see the building in front of RPM is getting cleaned up, right? Those places, we don't want to deal. So the only way we're there is somebody called it in. Somebody called it, and then we have to respond. We can't not respond to a resident, and then it is. So let's wrap. Are you asking for staff to bring this ordinance back? Let's look at the language. Let's see if we can tweak it.
Just that. I don't
Just that
want
one
to,
piece.
I don't want to, like I said, I want to spend a pile of staff time on this.
Right, just that one ordinance.
Just that one.
And I've
At
looked
least
at it,
look
and
at
there's
it.
just a series of, you can't park boats, you can't park RVs, you can't park cars without tags, right?
And
All of
I
those
don't want
kinds
to
of-
go down this long road here, but the problem is they're going to say, okay, now you're picking and choosing.
Right.
And I know that's not good. So I,
Which is why you can't just say, ready, use common sense and drive around. Right?
yeah, I know.
It's gotta be, and that's just the world we live in now, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the world we live in. So is that what you're asking? Mike, any thoughts on bringing
Just
that?
let us just see that part, because I haven't seen it.
Mr. Mayor, how about we'll forward an excerpt to the entire commission tomorrow as an email, and then at our next meeting, if the commission says, yeah, we want to make it a topic for discussion, we'll put it on a subsequent agenda. Mr. Mayor, a couple things, just to point out. On things that we know are controversial, and, we understand that a boat in the front yard is gonna not set well with people, and he made it very clear to us. We advise the property owner that, look, that if you disagree with the rule, it's not out of the question to come down here. We have 5 minutes at the end of every meeting for public comment, and ask the commission to consider that. So that invitation was extended, and we generally we'll hold off on things for 6 to 8 weeks to give somebody that opportunity to come in and say to the commission, I'm not asking you to give me a break from the rule, because you can't, but you could change the rule, and that would give me the break. In this particular instance, the property owner has been unwilling to do that. And so I think, well, it's easy to be the keyboard warrior to complain, but if it's going to require coming down to a city commission meeting and getting in front of the podium and asking, then that puts a little more earnest behind the ask. I would also mention that, as evidenced by our fireworks sales ordinance that prohibits the sale of fireworks within the community, we have discussed that in 2 years, over the last 2 years, a number of times with the commission, and we generally have gotten hung up on the detonation of fireworks in rural areas. And as a result, we've deferred a couple of times, which is fine and is appropriate, but there's never been any dialogue about whether it's appropriate to sell fireworks. So what this year, on New Year's, when it came up that we had a couple vendors wanting to sell fireworks, staff took some liberties and said, we're going to permit it for New Year's this year, and we're going to get it on an agenda before 4th of July, Independence Day, to ask the commission. Because I had a suspicion, just my suspicion, that the commission would say it's okay to sell them. Detonation is still going to get regulated. We haven't figured that out, but it might be okay for Mike to say we're not going to prevent the sale of those, Mike and staff, for this holiday, and then we'll get on an agenda for the next. That's just an example of where we know there's some pending legislation coming down the pipe. We're trying to be exercising common sense, trying to err on the side of not putting a resident out. But at the end of the day, when someone's complaining and it's in black and white, then it is our intent to move forward. Scott said that, that Mike was very absolute in that, yeah, we're going to enforce these codes. We get a lot of feedback about the things that is perceived paying no attention to code. And I've got a list in my office of 8 items that we're going to move forward in 2025 because I've received enough feedback, and frankly, I look in the mirror and think that is an area that I haven't performed as well as I should as your city manager, and we're going to step up on that. Now, I will send you an email here very shortly and say, here are the 8 that we are pursuing, and this is what the code says about it, and this is what we're doing about it, so you guys will be well aware. But Greta is an outstanding code enforcement officer. She has a perfect disposition for it. She is empathetic with everyone. She works with people to try to get them to solutions, because as Scott said, our idea is to get people into compliance. We'll hold their hand and absolutely help them get into compliance with our code. We don't want anybody having code enforcement problems in Newberry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that extended response time.
Well, and I saw your comment about this is on us, right? It's not on staff is
It's
doing
not.
it.
It's
Staff's
us.
doing the ordinance. And I'm in 100% agreement that we shouldn't have rules that we can't really pinpoint of exactly why that rule is, right? We should have a justification. I guess what I object to here is the methodology that we're going about this, right? Because, you know, I teach, and I'm telling you, the kids have the idea these days that if they go on social media and they say something, that's all they have to do to be a citizen, right? And I think American citizenship asks a whole lot more from us in order to participate. You know, it expects everyone to come to meetings. It expects to call elected officials, right? It asks us to engage. And when we reinforce the idea that all we need from our citizens is to go on social media, if you get X number of likes, we're going to do it for you. I think that's a bad message to send, right? All of you are responsive to emails. All of you call. All of you sit down and have coffee, right? I've never heard of any one of you refusing to meet with anybody. And to date, no one has reached out and asked me through any methodology, hey, I think this rule is not just, and I'd like to have a conversation about changing it, right? So I agree, send out the ordinance, let's review it. If staff has any justification for why that's there and why we should keep it, I'd like to hear that. I think, you know, we could certainly see. The other thing I think about when rules is I don't want to change the rule in a way that now puts it so much onus, right? Well, now I got to decide, is that cutting out onto the sidewalk? Now I got to drive, those kinds of things, because I think we shouldn't pass rules that we don't want to enforce. But once it's a rule, then it's a rule. That's why I don't have a lot of rules in my classroom, because I don't want to get my back up against the wall and say, well, I said it, now I got to follow through with it. So we're going to see that email in the next 2 or 3 days. Then we can decide whether or not we want to put it on the agenda and have a conversation. And I encourage anybody who's experiencing something similar, please reach out to us, because I think this board would love to go back and wipe away some of those kinds of things and clear the decks, right? But if no one reaches out and talks to us about it, and the first time we hear about it is on social media or the news calling all of y'all tyrannical dictators, right? Well, then it didn't really give you guys a fair chance to have the conversation before you're being cast in a certain light. Commissioner, what have you done, Commissioner Coleman?
Yeah, I'm
All right, Commissioner Clark.
I'm not gonna get on that escapade tonight. I've also reviewed it. I'm gonna have an offline conversation. I've already had, one today. It was sent to my phone with some of the stuff. I'll already be reviewing that and talking to staff, so I'm not gonna air it all out right here. I think that was quite enough to know where we stand. I would like to say, we've got a great place, a great country. I just come back from overseas, and I'm telling you, if you don't think you live in a great country, go travel somewhere and you'll see how good you got it. But we got a lot of things going on in the world. Thanks to Sheriff coming out and visiting us tonight. And I will say, there's rules at 1894, you ain't allowed to cross the street with an ice cream cone. So we ain't arresting people for it.
Right.
So I think we need to look at certain things, and again, the common sense approach, and I understand what you're talking about, but I do think we need to look at a few things there and maybe get this rectified and stop all this heat, the magistrate and all this. It's been done, it's said, so I think there needs to be a resolution for this one, get it off our back and keep moving forward. God bless America, and, you know, we got guys deploying every day, so thank our troops.
Thank you. Commissioner Farnsworth?
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Maison?
Yeah, I agree. Congratulations, Chad Scott. Good deal. Welcome. Can't wait. You brought up memories when you brought up Charlie Jacobs, because he's got a legacy here in Newberry. And I've heard a lot of his stories, so he's my uncle, by the way, so I've heard a lot of his stories. I would like to welcome everybody out for coming. I actually ended up seeing a tiny home that looked really cool. I'm excited, and I saw one drive right past me. I think it was yours. Was it yours? 2 of them now? They're actually really nice. If you guys haven't had a chance to go see them, you got one out there already now. They're really nice. Have you seen it? Very nice, very nice. I wanted to bring it up. But I don't have a trivia, but I do have An interesting fact that was texted me from Kadala. If you pour alcohol on a scorpion, what do you think would happen?
It swerve.
It stings itself, exactly. Goes crazy and it ends up stinging itself. And what other liquid you think would kill a Scorpio in your kitchen? Bleach. Pour that down your drain. So if you have scorpion issues in your house, pour a tablespoon of that in your drains or spray it in your
Now you got me
in your
freaking out
cabinets.
thinking scorpions are coming
They're out
coming out of
there.
the sink now. I'm gonna be
They're
looking
out there.
for them.
They're out there. And so that's a little interesting fact. There you go.
All right. Well, I want to say Happy New Year to everybody. Hope everybody's holiday season was great. Congratulations again, Sheriff. We appreciate that. I did want to follow up. We had a resident ask about a stop sign. I think it was Miss Brandy. She asked about a stop sign. I never get an update on that. Were we able to put the stop sign in for the resident? Did we assess the situation? I see Jamie getting up.
We have addressed it. Jamie knows
Jamie knows
better than I do.
Come on down. Just I'd like to just kind of follow up and see what happened.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. We took a look at that intersection at the behest of the citizen, and we had a traffic engineer take a look at it as well. They did not recommend it becoming a four-way stop due to the offset of the two roads. Currently, you have to stop eastbound, you have to stop westbound. The recommendation is to put additional street lights on both corners of that intersection. That has occurred.
Your staff's recommendation to put more street lights out as residents?
No, that's recommendations from the traffic engineer.
Or from the traffic engineer? Okay.
So we did that. Also a recommendation to clear out a tree that was a vision triangle issue that was preventing people from seeing the other side of the intersection. And they've requested that we put larger stop signs and some signage below that indicates that the north-southbound traffic does not have to stop. So those signs are on order and will be installed when it comes in.
So we're ordering bigger, more stop signs, more light. Are we talking about that great big oak tree?
No.
That caused a problem. We're trying to take that one down.
The smaller pecan tree is what we took down. It was actually within 1.5 feet of the edge of the asphalt, and it was a vision impediment if you were eastbound. It was difficult to see the stop sign and difficult to see the cars coming from the south.
Okay, so the resident only wanted one stop sign. So she's getting that one stop sign, and she's getting other stop signs, and she's getting lighting?
She requested it become a four-way stop. Okay. And the traffic engineer looked at it. I had looked at it and didn't think that it was a good alignment for that. Traffic engineer concurred with that. And so we basically put in place all of his recommendations for that intersection. His thought process was if you were going to do anything is to turn, other than what we've done, is to turn east and westbound traffic not to stop and make the stop north and south.
You go while I'm conceiving that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I see it. So do we have to do a four-way stop? Can we do a two- or three-way stop?
Well, it's already got stops from east to westbound and west to east.
Yeah, but I mean, I see that curve from the south coming north not being a stop sign because that's just, but going north, I see a stop sign. That's just driving it every day. So not a four-way.
Because that intersection, if I don't stop, I go into someone's house, right?
Yes,
It kind of goes this
that's
way
where
or
Brandy's
that way.
house is, and
There's
then
a big oak tree down there.
And then there's a curve that comes, if you drive, there's a curve that comes this way that has no stop sign, but I mean, I can see not putting a stop sign there because of that curve, but this coming this way is like a three-way stop. And there's no stop sign there, so if this guy goes and this guy's coming, there's a curve and there's like a 90-degree angle.
Well,
I didn't mean to get us onto a tangent here. I would say before we talk about like installing lights and doing everything, could we get a little, I'll work better if I see a graph, like a little map. Because it seems like what the traffic engineer is asking for and what the residents ask for is a lot more expensive. It may be better though, but I just need to see it. Can we?
We will.
Are we already done it?
Yes, we've already done it.
Well, never mind.
And we will forward the recommendation from the traffic engineer to the commission tomorrow. And one of the reasons we did not have a problem with going ahead and putting the additional streetlights, it was an area identified in the CRA where we needed additional streetlights anyway.
Okay.
So we've installed them, removed the tree, and put larger signage.
Okay, so I'm gonna drive down it and see, so I can see what you're talking about.
I drive it.
Because you're talking about a stop sign northbound that
Yeah.
dead end of the road.
Yeah.
And I can
If I'm being completely honest, I'm not a professional, but I drive roads a lot. I stop there, and like I told Mike and Jamie, I stop there because we are taught as drivers, you know, if you see a potential hazard, treat it as such.
Yeah.
And so if I didn't stop there and I hit a car, UPS would say, hey, look, it's a three-way stop. You should have stopped, look left, right, left before you see it. So if I'm stopping, it's a stop sign. So that's why I'm like, I can see it.
In all honesty, it seems like a relatively simple to put a stop sign there. So I just put it on a map. Let's have a conversation so we can see it. And that way you have a little more time to tell us what the traffic engineer and you were thinking about saying no stop sign. Because Alan sounds pretty like a low-hanging fruit kind of ask, kind of a thing.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we'll forward the recommendations to you tomorrow, and we'll
But
develop
we've already
a
done
schedule.
those things. I'll drive down there and see it, right?
And, Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna caution.
Hang on, guys, hang on. I know we're coming to the end of the meeting, but we're still in the meeting, so.
Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna caution
Hang on a second, guys.
the commission on some things. If you ride through parts of town where we have four-way stops, like coming down First Avenue here, and every time you drive through it, you think, how in the heck do we end up with all these four-way stops? And I'm gonna tell you exactly how it happens in Newberry and every other small community in town, is that someone complains and that there's a rapid decision that focuses only on one intersection and it's there, and then no one has the courage with the authority to go undo it, because then if someone gets hurt and we undid something, there's liability. So we live with it. But First Avenue, to me, is a great example of a road that has been stop signed to death. So in my training, and you know, that's a little over 20 years in public works, is that when a resident has a complaint, let's take the complaint, but we don't necessarily have to buy into the resident's proposed cure. We'll get a transportation engineer to help us figure that out. And so we try to get transportation engineers that are well-grounded and not way up there at a high level. But transportation and Jamie both had a lot of experience, came up with the solution they did, and I think if it's overruled, that the city again is taking on unwarranted liability.
Well, I'm not asking to make a rapid decision. I'm asking to put it on and have a nice conversation about it. My last comment, I will need y'all. So the concerned citizens reached out to me today and asked me to come and speak at the MLK, and I originally thought I could, but now I'm not going to be there. My son has a tournament that goes into Monday morning. Is anybody available Monday to go in and make a couple of 2 minutes worth of comments about what's going on, that kind of thing?
Where?
It'll be at the municipal building on Monday between 11 and 1. Anybody have between 11 and 1? So you'd be on the agenda just to talk to the city of Newberry about what the day means to us as a country, as a community. You don't have to answer now. You can look at your calendar. Text me back and I'll. No, he did it last year for me. You did it the year before that. Yeah. I was there now last year.
It's cold.
I was there last year. Yeah.
It's cold.
All right. We are adjourned. We already had citizen comments.
I understand that, but he called me keyboard warrior, so I think I have the right.
You can have a conversation with him. The meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
We did. We moved it to the beginning. You got to be with me on that. I made a big deal about it.